Welcome to BioSignals, the podcast powered by BioCrossroads, where we decode the pulse of Indiana's life sciences sector. Each episode, we bring you the innovators, breakthroughs, and bold ideas shaping the future of health and science. Welcome to BioSignals, the new podcast powered by BioCrossroads. I'm your co-host, Nathan Brown. And before we get to our conversation with Vince Wong, President and CEO of BioCrossroads, I'd like to take a moment to talk about why we created this podcast. So, over the past 2 decades, Indiana's life sciences ecosystem has transformed into a global powerhouse through research, innovation, and deep connectivity. We created this podcast to open the door to conversations happening all across our industry and to give you the opportunity to hear directly from the people behind this momentum. Indiana has a long history of companies whose work has shaped the foundation of today's life sciences industry. And when BioCrossroads launched in 2002, we stepped into an ecosystem with tremendous potential and helped bring more coordination, connectivity, and momentum to the work that was already underway. Cook Medical is one of the companies that helped shape that foundation and remains a driving force in the innovation that defines our ecosystem till today. So I'm thrilled to welcome our first guest to the podcast, Dan Peterson. Dan is the chair of our board of directors here at BioCrossroads, and he's also a longtime executive at Cook Group. He's currently the vice president of industry and government affairs at Cook. Dan has seen the ecosystem in Indiana evolve through the decades that he's been involved in all of this work, and he's seen it from multiple angles. So Dan brings a perspective that, frankly, I don't think a lot of other people have, and he's going to connect a lot of where we started with where we're going. So let's listen to the conversation between Vince Wong and Dan Peterson.
Dan Peterson, welcome to BioSignals.
Thank you.
This is our inaugural episode, and so you are a bit of our guinea pig for this podcast, so thank you for joining us.
I'm honored.
We are pleased to have you. You're serving as the Vice President of Industry and Government Affairs for the Cook Group and have been the longtime chair of BioCrossroads, which we appreciate your leadership, and have been really with BioCrossroads since its genesis in many respects. So you're so uniquely positioned to really share a perspective on how BioCrossroads got formed, what was the original intent, and then how has it evolved over the last 25 years or so, and maybe give a little bit of a history lesson for our listeners about that evolution.
Yeah, no, happy to. I mean, that's one of the benefits of being around a long time. You know, you can provide the historical context and, provide some insights into maybe the decisions we made that weren't perfect and what we learned from them. So yeah, happy to share what I've learned along the way.
Yeah, so it's 2002.
Yep.
What was kind of the thought process of yourself and the other leaders who came together to form BioCrossroads?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of aspects, I think, of that. I've probably forgotten a lot of the detailed elements of what brought it all together. There were a number of players involved. Actually, Melina Kennedy, who now is President and CEO of CICP, was in that early development in her role when she was a deputy mayor of Indianapolis. So a number of other players were involved. And I think from my recollection, the context of it was, even then we had amazing life sciences assets in this state, from the northern part of the state in Warsaw with the orthopedic sector, obviously Lilly and a lot of the pharmaceutical and biopharma related players here in the central part of the state. You had Cook and Boston well, actually not even Boston Scientific at the time, but Cook and others down in the kind of minimally invasive device arena in the Bloomington area. And we were all involved, and we were all, pretty significant players at even a global level at that point in time. And yet none of us really did anything together. There was not a mechanism for all of us to kind of come together and share and look at common, non-competitive issues. What are big opportunities going forward? How do we tell our stories more collectively? So it was all those things that we recognized. If we had a collective of really interested partners in this, we should do so and kind of see where we can take it. So that was really I think as much as anything, the origin. There are other aspects of that from an economic development standpoint, et cetera. But that was in my recollection, the kind of the core genesis of coming together on that front.
Yeah, great. And, I think over time, what's become clear as I've traveled, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is that both BioCrossroads and CICP, the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, has become um, really one of the role models for this whole um, concept of public-private partnership.
Yeah, for sure.
And how a community and ecosystem can be stronger if um, the different players collaborate. So maybe talk a little bit about that, of what are one or two or three things that you think are really meaningful that have come out of the collaboration that's happened through BioCrossroads. Are there a couple signature things
Yeah,
in our journey that you would point to as kind of long lasting impact?
I think maybe add to that framing of that question, and then a couple of things. I think at the time, we one of the things we had there certainly we had what at the time was called the Indiana Health Industry Forum, an organization that was kind of a collective, kind of a chamber of commerce type group that really tried to bring, through networking and through other types of shared resources that could be helpful. We had efforts around that. What we didn't have, and where I think BioCrossroads was formed, and what was and still is a critical um, piece of the puzzle, if you was an organization that could really go deep into developing and understanding the opportunities, the strategic opportunities that this sector has and could have if grown. And so a lot of those early days of BioCrossroads were a lot of deep research that was done, a lot of funded studies to try and help bring out what are the key opportunities, try and drive capital, obviously, was a big part of it. I think one of the big milestones, however, and that was all successful and was done, with a lot of partners along the way or funders along the way. I think a couple of probably the most important um, tangible milestone that pops into my head was the formation, the build out of the Indiana Bioscience Research Institute. And it's an important organization in and of itself, without question, hugely important, really will continue, and I think is coming into its own on really you're starting to see some of those tangible impacts of that in a lot of different ways. But in this context, to me, it was really a symbolic uh, action as well, because it was really, in my mind, the first time where we, BioCrossroads, but all the players came together and not just talked about the strategy, we brought it to life, right? And that included corporate leaders, Lillian Cook and others who were involved and put early
money into the development of it.
It was John Lecklider was the CEO of Lilly at the time, and he had kind of put out the challenge, if you will, of why can't we, right, if you will, have something like that here. The corporates came involved. We got state government involved. The city of Indianapolis got involved. Others, many other partners, to really stand it up and make it happen. And until that, it was important work, but I think that really was a very substantive point in time for the ecosystem as a whole. And what that's led to is, in today's world, from looking at our work at BioCrossroads, today we do so much more than we did in those early days. And it was a natural evolution by all means. But today in particular, we are tackling all the different aspects of how do we grow this ecosystem? How do we make the most of this ecosystem? How do we bolster it?
Sure.
How do we drive investments in those key things that are critical? We brought you on in a fabulous team. We've had great people involved all along the way. It's been remarkable. And that continues to this day. So we're doing so much, which is so important. And I think the equally important part of that is now we've had all these assets, had all this action, had all these successes. We've got to continue to tell the world about it.
Sure.
We can't just tell ourselves about it.
Yes.
We've got to tell the world about it.
Yes. And so, we're now just having gone through I think, 2-year anniversary since the launch of a 10-year sector strategy that BioCrossroads published in January 2024. And you and Melina Kennedy kind of led the development of that in partnership with Economy. And there are 4 pillars to that strategy. One was advancing innovation and entrepreneurship in life sciences. The second was expanding manufacturing footprint within the life sciences. The third is workforce developments and talent pipelines that need to be developed to be able to fuel the first 2 pillars. And the fourth is really elevating thought leadership of Indiana as a life science hub through collaboration and partnership of the community. And so I guess of those 4 pillars, Dan, where do you have 1 or 2 that kind of stand out to you in terms of the ones that you're most excited about, or that you see greatest promise of us continuing to further build upon?
I am super excited about all of them, to be honest, and I think they're all critical. I think that's obviously why there are 4 main pillars. They have different elements to them and in different stages of activity in those. But to be honest, I'm excited about all 4 of those and how they will come together and are coming together to really advance things probably more aggressively and at scale in a lot of different ways. We've got great innovation. We've had great innovation. We know we need more innovation. We need more startups. We need more innovators and leaders, and we need more money to fuel that. But there's a lot here, and I think what we're doing here with that pillar in particular are the strategic supporting mechanisms of activity that will help really drive it more aggressively than it has been even to this point in time. The manufacturing side, the reason we're number 1 in the country in life sciences exports and by so many other metrics in addition to that, why we're so strong is not only do we innovate it here and develop it here, we make it here. And there's so many huge positive aspects of that. The history of us being here for as long as we've been in those different areas is also a huge advantage on all those fronts, but especially in the manufacturing of these products, in my mind, because think about how many people have been in this industry who've been educated and worked and moved from one part of the industry to another, and the history that brings and the knowledge that brings, it can't be undersold as far as how important that is for the growth. So it's allowed us to continue to grow. And so, the manufacturing piece is something that we've begun to really, really hone in on. It's been there. It's not new to us. We're doubling down on it in a way that says, wow, what if we did this and put the gas pedal on it even further? How far can we go to help support that? So obviously timing's right for that.
And I think you bring up a great point in terms of that, that combination, that unique combination of that innovation engine that we do have here, as evidenced by the fact that we punch way above our weight in terms of number of peer-reviewed publications coming from our research institutions, whether it be academia or industry. The fact that we punch way above our weight in terms of patent production. So we not only can discover and invent things here, but we also can make things here too. And I think that's quite a differentiating aspect and combination of that vertical integration of capabilities that even Boston or San Francisco do not have. I think that's something that is really beginning to crystallize for us.
You're listening to BioSignals, the podcast powered by BioCrossroads. Now, let's hear more from Dan.
Let's move and pivot from BioCrossroads and our ecosystem, and let's dive a little on Cook, the Cook Group, an organization you've been with for decades.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I love talking about Cook. I've been there, 37 years, and so passionate about what we do and how we do it and why we do it. So it's a fabulous entrepreneurial story. Literally, Bill Cook and his wife Gail and their 1-year-old son started the company in a spare bedroom of an apartment in Bloomington. And today it's 13,000, 12 to 13,000 employees worldwide, privately held still. Massive impact on healthcare across the globe, touches patients all across the globe. So it's quite the story. It's still in Indiana, and Indiana-based company. It's based in Bloomington. We've got our footprint in Bloomington. Got people and companies in West Lafayette, in Indianapolis. So we touch pretty much the breadth of Indiana geographically, as well as we employ people from, folks that are just starting in the manufacturing side, all the way up through, masters, PhDs, MDs, throughout the whole supply chain or development cycle of the products we make. We're a minimally invasive medical device company. So, for those that aren't necessarily immersed in healthcare and medicine, think about the types of products that can be introduced into your body from a small puncture, if you will, into your vessel or into another part of your body.
Yes.
Using some form of imaging, an X-ray typically, to then deliver that device, if you will, under X-ray up to wherever it's going in your body. In the early days of minimally invasive medicine, most of those devices were to diagnose the problem.
Yep.
And today, most of the products that we all make in this industry are to treat a problem.
Yep.
And it's astounding what you can do with these technologies, with advanced imaging, to really treat problems that up until that point could not have been done either at all, because there was no cure, or had to be done in very open surgical methods. So the story I always like to tell or reference, and for those, you can't see me luckily on the podcast, but I have a lot of gray hair. For those of us with gray hair, when we were young, when somebody had a problem, they couldn't often diagnose, so they'd say, well, we've got to go in and do exploratory surgery to determine what's going on.
Yeah.
That phrase is gone.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore because of the advancements in imaging paired with the devices that we make to go in and, again, diagnose it, but then also treat it most of the time in a minimally invasive approach that also gets you out of the hospital much more quickly. You don't have all the side effects and all the problems typically that you might face. So wherever possible, we feel strongly that minimally invasive technology is there. We started, early on in kind of a interventional radiology space, but that's grown. This technology now is applied to virtually every part of the body, every discipline, from GI endoscopy to urology to intensive care medicine to, just across the board. So we're a broad product line of technologies. I think I'd end here with the story of Cook as we've grown. We've been a company that's willing to try things, get out there and follow where medicine's going, follow clinical thought leaders who said, if we could do this over here, why can't we do it over here? Hey, we'll help you figure out a solution to that. So we've been willing, and we're very innovative and willing to put not just words on paper, but put our time and money and treasure into innovating new things. So we've tried a number of things. We've been in the contract pharmaceutical space, biopharma. We've done some work in regenerative medicine. We've done a lot of different things over the years, and we've learned from each of those.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Cook is we've started a bunch of these that then have grown, and many of those we've either sold or somebody within the Cook organization has gone on to take that and go a different direction with it. So there's a lot of impact, which is really cool for us to see. We've got a lot of impact that we've seen from the Cook investments early on that have impacted, especially in the state of Indiana, a lot of entities that are here now. If you look in the Bloomington area, you've got Novo Nordisk, which used to be Catalent, which is a company that we had started called Cook Pharmica, which is then purchased and now owned by Novo Nordisk. Big company, it's growing. Another company that we had started called Cook Pharmaceutical Solutions that we sold to Baxter Pharmaceuticals. That's why Baxter was in Bloomington, and they just spun out all that part of their business into a new company called Simtra. And there's a bunch of those stories. So that's very cool to see that the impact not only comes from us, but from what people and others have done with the technologies that we've started. And there's a lot of those stories I could tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing that has been a revelation to me. Into this role. I've grew up here, and my dad was at Lilly for 37 years, and I was at Roche for 20 years. So I'm pretty steeped into the life science community here, but I didn't have an appreciation until I took this role 2 years ago as I've learned over time, the last couple of years, of just really the branches of the Cook innovation tree, and how that has been such a wide reaching impact into our community in creating a lot of these entities that you've just cited. Alumni from Cook have also gone on and started some new ventures, like Corey up in Incog Biopharma, right?
Sure.
Everything that speaks to is really that innovation culture that you guys seem to have cultivated at Cook, which is really great. And you kind of think of it as almost like a coaching tree. People talk about the Lombardi coaching tree, or more recently the Belichick coaching tree, Saban coaching tree. Yeah,
Soon it'll be the Signetti
coaching tree. But I think there's definitely a Cook coaching tree to be spoken of as well.
No, thank you.
And underappreciated. I think the other piece that is underappreciated as well is just how you, as a company, when you see a problem and you don't see a solution, you guys are willing to jump in and fill that void. And so maybe talk a little bit about that, and give me a couple examples of where you guys have flexed that muscle.
Yeah, no, that's a great. It's definitely a part of our DNA, and I would mention that kind of our brand essence that we talk about in today's world is very much reflective of that. We're relentlessly inventive. We're trying to be relentlessly inventive and deeply connected into our communities and our customers and what we're trying to do in healthcare and medicine and patients. So that reflects over in lots of different things. It's also a reflection. What we do is a reflection of our founders and the culture of the company, of really trying to not just talk about things, but actually do something about a challenge and an issue. Now, we're a private company, so that certainly gives us some flexibility, perhaps, that maybe others don't feel they have. It's really cultural in that if we're going to do something, we want to do it and make a positive impact and use our treasure, not just our money, but our people and our brains and our passion to do something about it. So we've got a long history of just kind of saying, well, we're willing to take a chance and dive into that, and let's bring folks along and trying to help make the most of that, and see where it might lead us. We don't always know exactly how it's going to turn out, but we have passion and we're willing to try it. So, maybe a couple of examples of that. Maybe one starting on the business side, on the technology side. One of the things that Cook's done forever has traditionally been if there's a patient population that there's a need for a product, we're willing to try and help bring that to the market, to the patient, if you will, to the clinicians that use it. Historically, we've done a lot of pediatric related products, as an example. So, pediatric products, luckily, there aren't huge populations of children that have all these different ailments. But when there are, they need the product. Well, to bring a product to market, to treat that issue, to deal with that issue, is not insignificant. There's regulatory costs and development approval and all that stuff. That's why it's a big lift. And when there's small patient populations that you have to, help treat, but also to help study and design the product, it's not for the faint of heart, if you will.
Harder business case to justify, right?
Yeah. So, we've done that for a long time. From an innovation standpoint, we were part of a recent group that's been stood up called the Crossroads Pediatric Device Consortium. Thank you. In partnership with IU School of Medicine and Purdue and Cook. And great example to try and really say, hey, there's a need out there globally. How do we continue to do what we're doing, but how do we bring more resources and efforts to it? And we're going to help get this off the ground and try and help drive that. Things like that that are really, I think, important. But we've done the same thing on needs in our communities. So, there's a number of those I could talk about. Cook's been in the southern part of the state where a lot of our facilities are. There's many places in Indiana and across the country, there's a housing shortage. Really challenged for people to find affordable housing and single family homes and that sort of thing that are there. So we decided we're just going to start building workforce housing. So we've done that in Owen County, we've done it in Orange County, and we're hoping to do that beyond in Lawrence and some other communities. We've studied that need, studied the market. We've come in and said, we're willing to help do this and do it right and partner with others to help, make sure the cost structure works. State's been helpful through the READY program, the investment program around infrastructure. So it's something we're passionate about doing, and we're going to keep doing it until hopefully we can help, alleviate that need. We've done a number of things. We partnered with Goodwill up here in Indianapolis and in Bloomington around developing some business models and developed a facility here in Indianapolis, the Near East Side of Indianapolis. It's a fully FDA-approved manufacturing, medical device manufacturing facility that Goodwill helps run and helps focus on a population of folks that in that 5-mile area that haven't had much workforce opportunity
wonderful.
for quite a while, and that's been a huge success. So there's a lot of the types of things where we're willing to lean in and not try and take over or not try and do it alone, but help bring some partners to the table and maybe see what might be possible.
How does that housing effort dovetail or have synergy with your workforce attraction and retention efforts?
Yeah, I mean, we're not just doing it for the sake of being a housing developer or we're doing it for our own reasons by all means, because we're trying to grow and retain a workforce, and it's a challenging area, like many, where the workforce or where the housing stock has just really not kept up. And so in particular in Bloomington, as an example, it's become a very expensive real estate market, but even outside of Bloomington, we know we need more housing stock, and where we're trying to attract people, if they don't have the housing, you're not going to get them. You got to have a lot of other things in the mix from a quality of life standpoint, but you got to have an affordable home. So
love that strategy. It's very, very strategic and long-term thinking. So thanks for sharing that. And I think just from a personal perspective, I've had one of my best friends, and then my family members have benefited from non-invasive technologies that I suspect drew upon Cook Innovations at the last 6 months. So it's precluded the need for open heart surgery. It's precluded the need to open the skull. So these are pretty meaningful, very meaningful innovations that really reduce the invasiveness of procedures and really drives better outcomes. And as really so from my personal perspective, thank you to the Cook Group for all the innovation that you all are doing and to drive minimally invasive surgery. It's super, super important. And I think there's a dimension around that too that I think you all are excited around in interventional MRI. So maybe talk a little bit about that and what does that look like from a next generation perspective, and based on what I know about it, I think could be worthy of a standalone episode, but give us a little bit high level overview of what that looks like and the promise that represents.
Yeah, we're excited about a lot of new innovation that's coming through in different parts of our business, by all means, across each of our divisions and business units. One of the things that we've been working on for a long, long time is this what is now described as interventional MRI procedures. And for folks that aren't immersed in this, historically, if you need to have a procedure done in a minimally invasive approach, that's typically done under X-ray guidance, if you will. So think about radiation. Okay, so the radiographic process exposes the patient and the clinicians to radiation. Thus lead aprons and all those things. The other piece is quite often it involves injection of a contrast media, a contrast dye, which is they're a lot less challenging to the body, not as toxic as they used to be, but it's still part of the mix. But in particular, the radiation is the piece. So if you think about historically, fluoroscopy or X-ray technology has certainly improved from a visualization standpoint, but it's not as
good as MRI.
Not as good as MRI or some of the more advanced imaging technologies. So for a long time, there's this vision of how could clinicians be able to do minimally invasive procedures in something other than a radiographic setting. Do it, say, in an MRI setting. How could that be possible? And for a long time, people didn't think it was possible other than in some very small, unique, niche ways.
Yeah.
So we've been working on it for a long time. We partnered with Siemens, a global MRI and imaging company, great partners. We were both working on it in a sense. And we kind of came together and said, how can we do this together? And so that's where we are. The technology is advanced enough to where the MRI machine itself can be designed and accessed and used by a clinician in that setting and be able to do those procedures. So what that means is, again, no radiation.
Yeah.
So think about that
Right.
from a patient's
Mhm.
perspective over time. No radiation that the clinicians are exposed
Yeah.
to. They don't have to wear the big lead aprons. Lots of stories about challenges for long-term health of clinicians who had to work in those settings. But more importantly, the visualization that comes with the MRI
Yes.
to guide that technology,
Greater
is
precision.
incredible
Yeah.
precision. So they're getting to a point where they're going to be able to treat, as an example, a cancer at a stage that couldn't be done in using traditional imaging technologies. So they're going to be able to treat things at a much earlier stage.
Yeah.
Multiple aspects of that. Cook's the developer and manufacturer of the devices that are used in that setting, and Siemens obviously brings the imaging equipment. We co-developed kind of basically the platform, if you will, that we're introducing across the globe. First was introduced in Europe this past fall and getting its full rollout here in the United States in the spring. So we're super excited about what that could mean. It's really a kind of an early stage platform that could really revolutionize a big part of certainly of invasive, procedural medicine.
Yeah, that's super exciting technology, and the more I've learned about, the more excited I get about it. You are the inaugural guest, and the question we'll pose to you is: what is maybe one or two technologies out there that or transformations that you think are going to really change your industry or your company?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things happening technologically within medicine, within healthcare, and certainly there's a number of those that are substantive and big. I mean, the 800-pound gorilla is how AI is going to impact everything. And we've dove in deep as a company into AI on all aspects, primarily on how do we use technology, how do we use AI to become a smarter company, how do we use that technology to be more effective, how can we use it to open up the innovative brains that we've got and really, in a more effective and efficient way, get to that innovation more predictably, more quickly, more effectively. So within the organization, we're all into diving into that. But then when you think about how AI will develop over time, to how it'll impact healthcare, the practice of medicine, how it will help improve potentially the diagnostic challenges that we have in medicine more quickly and more effectively over time. The development of new technologies, AI, with if designed right and having access to appropriate healthcare data over time, what that could mean to help avoid mistakes along the way or delays in developing a new technology, a new drug, a new device, the incredible potential to speed that process, but also target it in a way that you can get there more predictably. And if it's not going to work, you're going to know it faster because of these technologies will help you analyze that. You will be able to do predictive studies in a way using AI and historical data in a more effective way where you won't have to necessarily do potentially as many
Human stuff.
trials on humans or even animal studies if there are those involved. I mean, you'll be able to do that again in a different way. So I mean, unlimited potential. Obviously, lots of challenges with the implementation of AI, but positives of what AI will bring certainly seem in healthcare in particular, in medicine, hugely outweighing the risks as long as we just manage it all well
Great.
and smartly. Yeah.
Dan Peterson, thanks for a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground, a little bit of the history of BioCrossroads, a little bit of a look into incredible organization that the Cook Group is, and the culture, innovative culture you all have there, and then a little peek at the future, what the future might bring. So thanks for covering all these awesome topics, and thanks for being our first guest.
Yeah.
And thanks again for your leadership and contributions to our community. Thanks, audience, for listening, and I'll look forward to future episodes of BioSignals.
For more information about BioCrossroads, our events, programs, and how you can get involved, please visit biocrossroads.com.